Three clap. All right. Welcome. Here we are to our first podcast. This is our first one. Trying something different. Want to take a little more political approach to this. So we had to start off with somebody who's in the arena of understanding for our people in the political realm. I got my co-host here. Let him introduce himself. And go from there.
Greetings, everybody. So again, as my partner just said, it's our first time running this. Still, working through the kinks and stuff like that. My name's Aaron Simons, and I'll be co-hosting my boy Kevin Lewis, and we have our esteemed guest Cordell Riley here. So we're here to talk about some things that hopefully can impact all people in a positive way.
All right, so let's just get it started one time. So, Mr. Riley, introduce yourself for the listening audience, and just tell them who you are, what it is you do, and what impact you have on the community.
Well, good morning, and thank you for having me on your first podcast. So this is indeed an honor. Again, my name is Cordell Riley. I've been on the scene for quite a while, doing a lot of commentaries, economic commentaries, political commentaries. I do market research, statistician by profession. So I've been around analyzing data. I think that's the one of my core things that I do. And then from that, I'm able to give an informed opinion on what's going on both in Bermuda and of course around the world.
Okay. All right. So the first question I will ask is, what is your role in CURB?
Okay, with CURB, I'm the vice president. I had the post of president about a decade ago, so I'm still involved very much with CURB. We have been quite active the past couple of years, primarily due to the death of George Floyd, which kind of opened up the world's eyes about racial injustice. And for us here in Bermuda, that meant the corporate sector in particular having their eyes open and supporting CURB in a very meaningful, impactful way for the very first time, really.
Okay.
Do you think that the death of George Floyd impacting it from the corporate sector, you're saying, was a eye-opener simply because they can see it, or because it was something that the masses kind of clung to in social media and things of that nature?
I think what happened, I think is primarily because they actually saw it, because at that time, it was at the height of the pandemic. We were sheltering in place, so many people were home. And so this was on the televisions, and they were playing the full 9 minutes and 48 seconds. And to have that played over and over again, and then social media chiming in, I think that whole process led to them saying, wait a minute, we've got to do something.
Okay, and was CURB behind the march that happened in Bermuda? I think it was about 7,000 people that showed up for George Floyd.
For the Black Lives Matter, we weren't behind it. We were asked to participate. We had a booth there, but it was largely led by I think the social justice group who did the actual march. But we did support it.
Do you think that that march had any significance in us going forward as a race? Do you think that it was some unity? Do you think that it had any impact outside of just the fact that it was a march? Because we've had many marches.
Well, I think the initial impact was that it had the largest gathering at any one point. So it opens people's eyes to the fact that this is going on. I think from my perspective, I went at the tail end because it was during the height of the pandemic as well. So I just went at the tail end. But what I did see was it was multiracial. So obviously it's largely blacks, but it was whites in significant numbers joining the march. The impact since then, you really can't sort of put a sort of measure on it. I think because that was sort of a one-off thing, and if it were something that was sustained. So what CURB is doing, so when we got calls from the corporate sector to come in and do workshops, we have to sustain that. Do we do follow-ups and things like that? So I think having anything that's just done once doesn't have the impact unless you sustain it. And so I think that's probably where it fell down, that it could have been transformed into something else or morphed into something else. So for us, we did the initial workshops with them. A lot of them donated finances to CURB to fund things that we're doing. And so the work continues. So you have to make it sustainable for it to have meaningful impact.
Of course. And I just want to stay on the same page, kind of switch gears real fast. As a statistician, do you think that race relations has gotten worse or has it gotten better in the last 20 years or so?
Well, that's an interesting question because we did a survey this year, and that very question was on it. And what we found was that whites think things have gotten worse, and blacks tend to think things have gotten better or stayed the same. And I think the reason that whites think things have gotten worse is because it's more talked about, right? And so if the more you talk about race, I think it raises the level of guilt in terms, especially with things like George Floyd and other injustices which we see here in Bermuda in terms of discrepancies in pay and that sort of thing. When you start to talk about it, people feel uncomfortable. And so the more it's talked about, so you talk about from 2020, it's getting national, international attention, that makes people feel uncomfortable. So here in Bermuda, what we saw was whites saying it's gotten worse. And I think it's largely because we're talking more about it. I think blacks think things at least getting, maybe improving a little, or maybe they're saying the same because we are in fact talking about it more. And so we feel that people are facing up to it. So it's different perspectives from a racial point of view.
Do you think that they should feel guilty?
Well,